Okay, board members. We're going to move on to item number 5, the approval of the minutes. We've got minutes from our December 2nd work session and our December the 9th business meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I have one correction or comment.
Okay.
I
don't have them open.
It's page 3 of the minutes for the December 2nd. So the last paragraph, when Lynn was talking about the 1.5%, I thought he said that was because the county also gave their employees 1.5%.
Okay, that is my recollection as well. Does everybody else have that same recollection? Okay, Mr. Monroe, we've got one minor correction. And so do I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
I've got a motion.
Or second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion has passed. The next thing we're going to go to is 6, reports, board chair comments, and I've got just one brief comment to make. Cabarrus County Schools has had an incredible amount of success, a lot of alumni to go do many, many different wonderful things, but we potentially have somebody who's done something that has not been done before. And this week I would like to congratulate Heather Simeon, 2013 graduate of Hickory Ridge High School, who was picked out of 400 people to be a Disney princess. So she will be working at Disney World in Orlando as Ariel and Rapunzel. And I just thought that was a pretty amazing thing to have a goal and a lifelong dream and be able to achieve it. And so who knows what the future holds. But our graduates do a lot of amazing things, and we were doing an excellent job in our system. So anyway, just congratulations, Heather. We're proud of you. And Dr. Shepard, we'll move on to your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an introduction or two before we go any further. I want to introduce in the audience tonight Ms. Rachel Wilkes. Rachel, I don't know if you can catch her on the camera back there in the back, but she's the new executive director of our educational foundation, and we look forward to working with you. Today was her first official day on the job, so welcome, and looking forward to many great things together. Also, Glenda Jones is in the audience tonight. I don't know if we recognize Glenda last time or not, but she is our Chief Human Resource Officer that will be taking charge March 1, is that correct? Following Kathy Auger, who will be retiring soon, and we'll say more wonderful things about you in the near future, Kathy. But Glenda, we're so glad to have you with us tonight, and thank you for coming in and getting to know us all. And so just a few other things I'd like to say about today is, and throughout this week, our high school students will take their end of semester exams. And if it seems as though the exam window is shorter, it's not your imagination, because it is. Due to new state requirements, all exams must be given during the final 5 days of the semester, which ends this Friday. High school students will be dismissed from school early this week, with the exception of Friday, which is a full day. Parents can get more information concerning the testing schedule and school schedules over the next week if you'll visit our district website at www.cabarrus.k12.nc.us. I'd like to thank our staff, students, and families for your cooperation last week on the days that we postponed the start of school due to the polar vortex weather pattern that gripped our area and much of the country. Delaying the start of school during these extreme temperatures was the right thing to do, I believe, and we were thinking of the health and safety of our students, particularly the more than 22,000 bus riders. We could not have our students waiting at bus stops for buses impacted by the extreme cold temperatures. Now, I know that there were a few comments about there not being a considerable warm-up in temperatures during the 2-hour delay, but I just want to say, while that's true, the delay was meant to keep students indoors and at home a little longer so that our transportation team could ensure that our buses were indeed ready to roll. Our fleet of 270 buses are not equipped for operating in frigid temperatures, and we don't have a supply of engine block warmers, nor should we, given the infrequency of such extreme temperatures in our area. So I'd like to thank Dan Meehan and our bus mechanics and other transportation staff who were on the job at 4 a.m. both days, ensuring that our buses were operable. And by doing so, they were able to identify replacement buses for those that were not able to run safely and ensure timeliness on our bus routes, thus minimizing the amount of time bus riders had to wait at their stops each of those extremely cold mornings. So thank you so much. Next, I'd like to congratulate our 2014 Cabarrus County Schools Spelling Bee champion, Miss Joy Jackson. And Joy is a 7th grader at Harris Road Middle School. She, along with school spelling bee winners from each of our elementary, middle, and middle schools, competed in our annual district spelling bee last week. Joy and the runner-up battled it out, just the two of them, for 18 rounds. More than 17 minutes just between the final two before Joy was declared the winner. And we wish her the best of luck and know that she'll represent us well in the upcoming Charlotte Observer's Regional Spelling Bee in February. Also, a reminder to our viewing audience, as you're driving around town, be sure to check out our new Clear Choice billboards, which are promoting 2 important themes in 3 locations. And I think we're going to try to get this up on the screen for you now if we can, possibly. The family engagement and student success is the first theme of our billboards, and that billboard is on Highway 29 near Pitt School Road and at the roundabout on Cabarrus Avenue near the MLK Plaza. And then the CCS Longevity in the Community billboard is on Highway 29 near Highway 73. So we're very proud of the Clear Choice effort, and I think our staff, as you saw tonight, and students bear evidence that we are the clear choice in Cabarrus County. And last, we're in the midst of our magnet application season. Applications are available online as well as at each magnet school. Applications are due no later than noon on Friday, January the 31st. And you can learn more about the various magnet programs we offer, as well as information about the application process on our district website. So as you can tell, Mr. Chairman, it's been a very busy month, and I thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. And we will move on to 6.3 and ask Ronnie Boone to come to the podium for our annual report, our 2012-2013 annual report.
Good evening again. I am very excited to share with you the annual report for the 2012-2013 school year. As we have in the years past, we will have the report available electronically, as well as a limited print run of hard copies that will be available in the next couple of weeks. The annual report is actually at the printer right now, so we are expecting delivery of the hard copy versions within the next 7 to 10 business days. The dimensions for that hard copy report will be 7.5 by 11, 7.5 inches by 11 inches. So it's a little bit smaller than the books that we have been producing in the past, but we have, and we will have a 16-page report this year versus a couple of years we did have a 20-page report. And the change in the number of pages, as well as the change in the size, was to help with some of the cost, as well as simply to make sure that we were not simply just filling up pages just for the sake of filling up pages, but we were making the information we were putting in the report impactful and very purposeful. I'd like to walk you very quickly through the report, and I want you to know that this is the first look at the report. I embargoed the release of it and the posting of it until tonight so that you all would have the first look at it. We'll post it online tomorrow, but did want you all to have that sneak peek since you are our very important clients. You're going to do it? Okay, thank you, Kelly. So can you go back to the cover for me? Sorry. The cover, you will notice, features lots of smiling faces of CCS students, from our youngest students to our oldest students. And you will see throughout the entire report, keep scrolling, you'll see throughout the entire report that we start off each section, each major section, with a portrait of either a student or a student and a teacher, or a teacher by herself. The report also features our vision, mission, and belief statements, an introductory message from Dr. Shepard, a listing of our schools, and it's organized by our priority areas, the 5 priority areas. And it uses a combination of facts and figures and statistics, as well as stories and photos to illustrate each priority area and highlight events from the past year and significant accomplishments throughout the school year. One difference that you may notice about the report from previous year's reports is the lack or the absence of a branded theme. This year, working with the designers, we decided to forego a deliberate theme and instead let the report stand on its own and as a recap of the school year and the work that we have done. If there is an implied theme, it's certainly the clear choice. This report is designed to illustrate how our response to the changing public education landscape illustrates and illuminates the fact that we are indeed the clear choice. We always have been, and we always will be. You will notice that the report features fewer stories, as I mentioned before, fewer charts and graphs, and focuses more on an all-encompassing look at Cabarrus County schools and the people who are a part of Cabarrus County schools. We felt like by choosing the best stories and the best facts and the best figures, that would make for a more interesting and enjoyable read for the reading audience or the viewing audience for anyone who's viewing it online. And I'm also pleased to tell you that in this particular annual report, you will not find any stock photography. Every photograph is a photograph of a real Cabarrus County School student or staff member involved in real activities and real events. And that is a big deal because a few years ago, we had to purchase a considerable amount of stock photography to add to the lack of images in our photo library. And I would like to say that the fact that we didn't have to purchase any stock photography is a testament to Mike Martin, who is our district photographer, and also to the many contributors from our schools and from the community who send us photographs that are good quality, that we can use, and that they let us use a lot of times for free, and even no photo credit required. So we appreciate that as well. We also felt like using the photography that has real Cabarrus County School students and staff in the report certainly adds another layer of authenticity to the report. The annual report this year was designed to complement our lookbook, which is our digital magazine, as well as the billboards that Dr. Shepard mentioned to you just a few minutes ago. And it's the report focuses a lot on the students of Cabarrus County Schools and what we do for students, because after all, that's the reason that we're all here. I want to mention to you that we do plan to update the lookbook next semester, since we're about to end a semester, and we're going to focus on priority 4, specifically our community partnerships and how Cabarrus County Schools gives back to the community. So be on the lookout for that to come out in the next couple of months. We used the same design team for this project as we did for the Clear Choice branding campaign to keep that consistency and the look and feel with the other materials. And we will have, like I said, a limited print run, so we'll only do about 500 copies. But we feel like that's enough that we can get the book out into the community, as well as having the reach with the electronic version. We're very proud of this annual report, and we certainly hope that you will be too. And I'll entertain any questions you may have at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ronnie. That obviously a lot of work and hard work went into that, and we certainly do appreciate it, and it looks fantastic. The blips that we got here looking on the screen, it looks fantastic. Board members, if you got any questions or comments you want to make, or we can go ahead. And Rob, do you have anything that you'd like to ask?
No, great job. I mean, I'm sure you're going to show us the hard copy of the electronic version, so we'll get to look through it.
Absolutely.
But from what it looks from this presentation, outstanding. I like the use of the actual photos of our students and our teachers. I think that does make a difference.
All right, Carolyn?
Ditto, and I think it does make it more personal, and it will make the parents read when they can see their children and, a location they can relate to. It makes them want to pick it up and read it. And, when it's relating to them, it does make it more personal, and it will make them read it. And so I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry?
Great job as always, and I know that you're really working hard to get the message out about Cabarrus County Schools and being the clear choice. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the fact that you and Mike were able to use the photos of the children and get the permissions to put them out there. I'm sure you had to go get permissions from each one of the parents to do that. So, and I'm sure they were proud to have their children highlighted in this wonderful way. So, now will this be located? Will there be a link right on the front page of our website?
Yes, we have a link in the quick link section of the front page for the annual report, and then you can also access the annual report from the Our District tab as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Shue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ditto on what Mr. Shoemaker said. I think it's excellent, what we're doing to show the public that Cabarrus County Schools is the clear choice. One question that I have, and I hadn't had any children in the school system in a very long time other than my grandson, and anyway, he's not even with me now, but the question that I have, is there a way that we have in our schools to measure the effectiveness of the billboards? The Cabarrus County Schools, the clear choice. When the students come to our schools to enroll, are there a blank on the form that tells us where they came from because of advertisement? You see this all the time. We need to try to find a way to measure the effectiveness. And I just wonder if there's anything in the thought process or if there is a way to do that.
From what I understand with the enrollment form, and I'm not the enrollment expert, that would be Donna, but from what I understand on the enrollment form, that there isn't a question right now about how a student may have heard about Cabarrus County Schools or have found their way to Cabarrus County Schools. That's certainly something that I can work with her and her department on trying to add to try to measure that effectiveness for sure.
I appreciate that. I think it would be a very helpful tool for us for ongoing because this is an environment that we've never really been in before. We've never had to compete for students, if you could use the word compete, because you saw in the paper just recently Cabarrus is getting 3 more charter schools in addition to the ones we already have, not counting the private schools and that type thing. So it would be a good figure for us to know or to measure how we're doing. And I think we'll find that we're doing a lot better than we really know we are, but I think we'd like to see it on paper, though.
Mr. Shea, I just want to comment on that briefly. And she's right, it's not currently on the enrollment form. However, I do want to caution the board in how it goes about collecting the data, because the strategy is not about a billboard. The strategy is multiple facets around sending the message that Cabarrus County is the right choice. We're a little different than a company that's producing an object where you say, yes, I saw this advertisement on the internet, or I saw this advertisement in the newspaper, or that kind of thing. All that we do, including the opportunities for our magnets, the things that we do within our regular settings, the billboards that we do, all of that communication together goes about getting people to talk about the great things going on in Cabarrus County that we hope will ultimately impact the decision of the parent and where they decide to go. So I just want to make sure that I throw that out there before we decide on that one checkbox, because there's a lot of other things that would be hard to put in that checkbox. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to Ronnie.
Well, with that being said, that's something that you guys can work on, Ms. Boone and Donna. Y'all work on it, and that's just my thoughts, and you can just give me some feedback on it or whatever. And I appreciate Matthew coming to the podium and speaking that. But I think that any time you spend public money, that you need to at least get some kind of estimate of the results of that, whether it be on the enrollment form or some other way, just to spend the money that we spent to throw a billboard out there. we don't know how we're going to know whether it's being effective or not unless we get some type of results.
Right. And I will say that before we decided to actually even go with a billboard advertising campaign, we did a lot of research about different mediums and what kind of reach those different options offered. For example, we didn't choose radio advertising because the radio market is very fractured, and there are just a myriad of options in terms of how people can get advertising messages through radio. We chose the billboard advertising because it seemed to deliver the largest reach for the least amount of dollars.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shue. Mr. Harrison?
Well, Dr. Shepard, Ms. Boone, and everyone who helped her in this effort are testaments to their professionalism and the detail-oriented quality that you have gathered in your cabinet, and the administration here of the school system are very proud of you, and we're very thankful, for the hard work that you put into this. Dr. Probst, I don't mean to imply to overload the system somehow, but if this is going to be online and available to the community, I'm wondering if possibly in waves of emails that are staggered in some kind of way that we could distribute this link to the parents, the people who should care about the school system, and communicate it directly to them so it's put in their hands, and so they can click on that link and go through this documentation, and not in a passive way, but in an assertive way that puts it right in front of me, and all I've got to do is click to go through the 16 pages of this, as well as the staff, as well as the teachers. I know that's asking a whole lot and shouldn't all happen in one massive push, but put it out in the hands of people. I would ask our media partner with the Independent Tribune to prominently make the link available as well, please, if that's possible. Get it out in the hands of the people who do care and should care and need to know the facts and figures. And and on top of that, even the wave of new parents who would be putting their children in the systems this summer. So don't leave those out as well. It's good information. They need to know it and have it at their fingertips. Thank you again.
Thank you, David. Jeff, do you have any comments?
The only comment I'll make is that I'm looking forward to downloading the report tomorrow and having yet another reason to brag about our school system.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. And that really is what I was, my only comment, I did want to make sure we said thank you to Mike, the photographer. I mean, we see him here on Mondays, but he's doing a lot out, and I think that's fantastic that we've been able to use actual Cabarrus County school students. But, Mr. Shue used the word compete and said, well, I don't know if we want to use that word, but really, the facts are we've been asked to compete. When the cap came off the charter schools, we've been asked to compete, and I think we've stepped up to the plate in a big way. And I'll just go back to the Star Spangled Banner tonight with our strings program. That's just another example of something that we're doing to try to make sure that we provide a whole educational experience for our children. And this is just part of that message of making sure that the parents know all of what we're doing in Cabarrus County Schools. So thank you very much. We certainly do appreciate it. With that, board members, we're going to move on to item number 7, our guest speakers. And for the public's knowledge, guest speakers may be scheduled on the agenda of the board's business meeting by calling the board clerk at 704-262-6238 by 12 noon on the Friday prior to the meeting. Individuals addressing the board may speak for 3 minutes, and persons representing a group may speak for 5 minutes. And tonight we do not have any public speakers, so we will move on to the approval of our consent agenda, item number 8. So board members, these are items we talked about last week at our work session that we put on our consent agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted? I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries, and the consent agenda has been approved, and we will move on to our action agenda and item number 9, and we will ask Mr. Lynn Whitkey to the podium, and we've got several items here. We broke them into separate items. It seemed like in our discussion last week there were different points of view and different ideas on some of the different plans and proposals. So I thought it best if we talk about these individually, and the first one we're going to talk about is the facility assessment study of all Cabarrus County schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think what I'd like to do is invite Dave Burnett to come up and address this with me. We have attempted to make contact with a number of counties because I think one of the things that came out of discussions at the previous meeting and at the retreat that the board had was what are other counties doing, around the state. And although we didn't get a large amount of response, we did get a couple of counties that we were familiar with, in Guilford and Durham counties that also have similar studies to the one that Union did. We believe CMS does, of course, because of the scale and all. They have had a number of studies done over the years, and we believe that county has one as well. We'll continue to do that research just to look at counties, again, similar in size to us, as well as those that just have it in general. I think what has come out of the discussions and the research that we found is that the majority of folks who are managing facilities anywhere near the size of our organization, our district, do have some form of facilities assessment. I will pass these out. I know you were sent a document similar to this electronically. I just wanted you to have a copy of it in front of you. It's an example of a section from the report itself and a summary statement of the costs involved. You'll see from the summary of costs that in some cases some of the needs of the schools are substantial, and I would remind folks that the majority of what's in a report like this is a snapshot in time of what the school has. It is a baseline of where the facilities are at any point in time. And it's incumbent, of course, on staff as time goes by to update these. But, of course, you have a tremendous basis to work from. And normally what's done is that, if RIF reports are going to be done on a 3-year basis or an annual basis or whatever you choose, then you're just working with the existing information that was done at the time of the study and updating that segment of each school's study so that it is current. So we call it a living document because it is, and it has to be. But at the same time, it's also a tremendous planning tool because we know, for example, we ran into a situation where we had a number of schools that contained a particular hot water heater, and it failed after a limited number of years, and unfortunately all the schools were affected. So we've been struggling for the last 3 years to get these hot water heaters replaced. If we had the information and we knew at the time going in that was the same manufacturer, the same product, we would have been immediately alerted to that. In this case, I guess our biggest problem is that, one, this document doesn't exist. Two, what information we have is pretty much in the minds and the knowledge, which is not unusual, but it's called institutional knowledge. It's the people who are turning the wrenches. It's the people who are working on the equipment every day, day in, day out. They are our knowledge base. That's fine as long as they're a member of our staff and with us. But as they retire, as they get ill and can't be on the job that day, things happen that affect us, and we don't have a database to go back to and say, okay, what HVAC equipment are we dealing with, and why is it failing? And the only thing I can say is facilities that I've been involved with in the past, and I think Dave would say the same thing, these are fairly common in industry and certainly more and more in the public arena because it took a while for the public arena to reach it. It's not a small undertaking, both financially and time-wise, but it is a significant investment in the future. It becomes a planning tool, as I said, for everything that goes forward. And people have said, well, why aren't we doing a 15-year plan? Why aren't we doing another 5-year plan? Why aren't we? We did those plans, and what we found was, as we moved forward, was that the information was not detailed enough. The information that we had just simply didn't exist to base to make a very concrete estimate of what we were going to do in the future. And I'm not so much thinking about new schools. I mean, those are generated by the needs and the growth in the community. But when you talk about facilities assessments and what can come of these, as you can see in front of you, there are millions of dollars of needs that were addressed by this study. That's the kind of thing that you need justification for. More than just institutional knowledge, more than just a we need or we feel like. You need a book, a document that explains the whys and the wherefores of every school, every piece of equipment, and basically the condition and the life expectancy of all of that. So I think that there was a question of costs. I just wanted to reassess or tell you that we're looking at doing 23 schools with a consultant exclusively. Those are the schools that are older than 10 years. We would be looking at some level of work, and I'm thinking depending on the age of the school, we have another 13 schools that are 10 years or younger. And so in those 13 schools, one of the concerns I have is that we at least maintain the same format throughout all of the work that's done. So we will be working closely with the consultants. I think that our staff can contribute a lot of the information. We have quite a bit of it in what we call O&M manuals that we got from the contractors, but somebody has to dig through that. So I would like the flexibility, and I think that's what I came here to say this evening. I would like the flexibility to work with the consultant, negotiate a price within the bounds of what we've asked for and the total cost for this particular study, and then go forward with the study, trying to minimize the costs for the county, for the school district, but certainly making sure that we have a consistency and a level of detail that is consistent throughout the study for all of the schools. Because even if a school is 2 years old, 3 years old, there are needs in that school, and there's also the need to document in the same fashion all of the equipment in that school, just as we would a school that's 50 years old. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Whitkey. I do have, before we start our discussion, and I will start with Dr. Phillips, but before we do that, I did want to ask Mark something. We're going to discuss these individually, and each one has a dollar amount attached to it. But will that dollar amount, if we approve it individually, does that mean that dollar amount is attached to that study, or will we be approving one total dollar amount? I wanted to have the discussion on each item, but not necessarily break it up into individual dollar amounts. Give them the flexibility to manage exactly what we're doing. And I don't know if Kelly wants to comment on that or not. I just wasn't sure. The way we have the agenda, I wanted to make, before we started, I wanted to make sure we had that covered.
I think, let's see, I'm looking at how the actual motion's worded. You certainly can approve the project and, without, and then just have a collective. I think you can do it that way. I think we just want to be clear, and it may be clear enough in your comments, that when you're voting on each item, you're saying whether or not to do the assessment. And as long as you're giving authority to move ahead, I think they can negotiate the best price they can. I don't know that you're committing yourself to spend that amount. These are estimated. The dollar amounts here, I think, are staff's estimate as to what they think that work will take. Obviously, at this point, there's not a contract before you for that. They want authorization to go ahead and engage a consultant to do this work.
Okay, I guess what I wanted to make sure of is for something like 9.2, the next one, if it's above the dollar amount that's listed here, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't stuck. Now they've got to come back. I guess what I'm hearing from your comments is we're going to approve the amount of, and we may change it. There may be a board comment that we all agree on that for whatever reason something's going to change on the number. But does that make sense?
Right. I think what you, as I read the motions, each one you're saying let's approve preparation of that master plan, and I guess I view the money, it's coming out of the fund balance. I view this as an estimate, a staff estimate on how much it costs, and you're giving them approval. And unless it's going to be a big enough change that they'd have to come back to you for either additional budget funds or something, you're approving them to go ahead and negotiate with a consultant to do that. So I don't think you're saying we must spend the amount in the dollar item or that they're limited by that. You're really saying, go and do the assessment, and that's provided as an information item to the board as the best estimate of what they think it's going to cost. But we don't know to a certainty right now. I
Right.
don't think what that number is going to be.
Okay, well, with that said, we will start on comments on the facility assessment study from Dr. Phillips.
Okay, so, as I understand it, the main motivation for this assessment, not the ones that are looking at more detail at specific schools, but for this assessment is to kind of help document the fact that our school system has been underspending on the upkeep of its facilities. And that because of that, the massive investment that our taxpayers have made over the years is being slowly weathered away. Let's just use that term. Is that a correct statement on my part? That you're trying to assess, how much repair is sitting out there that we need to address, and I guess also how soon that needs to be done or when things will wear out.
Right. I think you're correct, Mr. Phillips, in that I look at it in two ways. One is sort of this baseline of information, just what's the nameplate information on a boiler or a water heater or a piece of electrical equipment, basically telling us what it is, where it is, and what it's doing. And then also the condition of that piece of equipment so that we can begin to predetermine what its life expectancy is. That's the only way, that's what is the best thing about this from a standpoint of a facilities manager. You want to know how the condition of it is currently and what the expectancy of its life is. Because then you can plan that in 2 years or 5 years or in 10 years, you can plan for its replacement and budget accordingly. Right now, we continue to talk about this term break fix. We've been doing that for as long as anybody here has been able to talk to me about it. You can't. The problem with break fix is that in many cases, if you're not properly funded for something, you're spending a lot more money for the fix than you should be. And if you do that time and time and time again, your whole budget is being expended on things, and you're reducing the impact of your budget because you're spending more money than you should on individual items. If you have a plan to go forward, and I can tell you that in 5 years we're going to need X amount of dollars to replace the HVAC equipment at 5 schools, we can plan for that. We can ask for the design money, we can ask for the construction money, and get those things done in a way that we can bid it competitively and get it repaired. We don't have schools being shut down because things aren't working, and most importantly, we're getting it at the best possible price the market can offer us, rather than waiting for it to go clink, clink, bang, and then suddenly we have a system that isn't working, and now we have to do whatever we can and spend whatever we have to make it work again. It's a long answer to your question, but...
Okay, I appreciate that. But I guess some of the sentiment that I've heard from constituents is, haven't we already done this? I mean, haven't we already told the commissioners that we need, what was that, $180 million or something like that to bring all of our facilities up to snuff? And how is this going to be any different?
It's going to be different from a standpoint that it'll be more detailed. It will be different in terms of, it will give us a better look at whether or not the assumption that all the schools that had a boiler, or let's say a hot water heater, that was of that manufacturer and vintage, was of the same condition, the same problems. We may find that 1 or 2 of them were not as serious as the others and be able to get additional life out of those. Right now, the general assumption is they're all bad because we've had several fail, and that might not be correct. We might be looking to replace something that, in fact, could give us additional years of use and life if we didn't take that general view. At this point, because of the nature of how we've been funded and the difficulty in getting the amount of funds we need, we tend to generalize a bit just because we don't know when the next funding process will allow us to do that, so we're going to plan to take what our experience has been and apply it more or less across the board.
So there's actually a chance that when these outside experts come in and look at our buildings, that they may come up with a conclusion that says, oh, no, you don't need to spend $180 million. Maybe it's only 130 or 150 or whatever it is. But even if it's 179 million, we actually just came out ahead, right? Because we only spent 300,000 to find out about it.
That is true. And the other thing that I'm hopeful is that because of the nature of the experts we'll be hiring, that they will have certainly a broader perspective. I think sometimes we're all just a little bit too close to the problem. They're coming in truly with an unbiased opinion. They do this for a living. They'll be telling us pretty much what they see and what they find. But then in terms of solutions, rather than just fixing that and replacing it with something that will work, they may be able to look at it and say, if you just step back a little bit and look at something that's more sustainable or perhaps more efficient in terms of its operation, you'll be better in the long run. And we're hoping that we can gain or glean that kind of information from them as well, rather than just, we have really talented workmen and great mechanics, as we call them. But sometimes I think we get lost in the heat of the moment, the fixing and the repairing, and we don't think more globally.
As an engineer who has supported operating facilities, I know the feeling that you're so busy battling fires, as we say it, that you can't think ahead to what a strategy is to prevent the fires in the first place.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Harrison.
Well, I guess we are beginning to feel your pain in the need for this data. My comments are global, Mr. Chair, and so I won't repeat them for each assessment that we talk about, but I might go into slightly different details for each assessment. To me, the data that we hope to get, by whatever means, by whatever method that we finally agree upon, is and will be an investment that we will refer to in the near future and be solid footing for our requests to the county. So I preface things with that comment. I believe in the approach that we seem to be taking in requesting compiling this kind of data. We're in effect saying that we need some administrative help in the facilities management area to actually manage and control and work with this data going forward. So that's a personnel concern that we'll have to address as time goes on. But it sounds like we were saying that we need some kind of additional resources to go forward, but that's a separate issue in a sense. To me, this collection of data kind of has some important criteria that I hope we'll go over at the right time and place. We're going to need a very close review of the contract from a legal standpoint to know what we're getting, know what our agreement is with, again, what I'm using is the vendor who compiles and collects and presents this data to us. It goes obviously without saying, but I'll say it anyhow, the data has to be valid, and it has to be reliable data, and it has to have some shelf life to it. That would be valid and reliable for several years into the foreseeable future, not 15 or 20 years into the unforeseeable future, but into the immediate future that we can reasonably feel confident about the data. I think there'll be some discussions about community buy-in. This is an investment not just for Cabarrus County schools, this would be an investment for Cabarrus County, because this data would need to be vetted and have a great high confidence level from the whole county and the other players and stakeholders, and I hope we take that approach. Along those same lines, the data would need to be transparent but kind of what I mean. And flipping through the example that you gave us, those are narrative statements in there, but they're pretty much in plain English. So any individual should understand what is being described and the issue going on with those components in the examples that you've given to us. But it would need to be available to the community and in plain English so that anyone could understand the particular needs. And finally, the data would need to be manageable, going back to the personnel needs or the potential personnel needs. To if we asked you how many boilers you had that were needed to be replaced in the next 14 and a half months, it shouldn't, in theory, take more than a couple days to, or considerably less, to discern that information from the data, so that it is, again, good, usable, but accessible data. So I'm trying to keep my, hopefully my contributions to the process that you want us to approve here as high level as possible. But those would be the criteria that, at this moment, that I would apply to our my own vote and my own decision. So I'm looking forward to further discussions tonight. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Shue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of thought and a lot of waking up in the mornings at 3 and 4 o'clock thinking about this. You know, when you look at $500,000, it's like I said, I don't want to be redundant. It is a lot of money, but when you look at the big picture, it's a small amount of money. There's no doubt. I mean, I've been on the board long enough to know that we've voted for multi-million-dollar contracts and not have to worry about it too much. But this has troubled me, though. I have to admit, Lynn, you and I have talked about it. What I'm going to say is it's not personal by no means. I hope that we can glean from it, because I've been prayerfully considering all of this for a couple of weeks now. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's something does need to be done. But one of many things that I don't want us to do as a board, and this is, now keeping in mind, this is me, and there's 6 more of you that have to decide what we're going to do on this, because it is on the action agenda tonight.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want it to turn into us against them or a them against us. What I would like to see is a coming together of the commission and the Board of Education. Not that we hadn't already told them, about our needs. We met soon to be 2 years ago. We've told them a number of times, but I think, Mr. Wick, you said it right. I'm not 100% sure that we got complete buy-in from all of the commissioners. Now, we may have buy-in from a couple commissioners, but I don't believe we got 100% buy-in. But what I would like for us to do, though, is I'm going to offer a plan here just in a couple, maybe just a minute or two, is to set up, before we vote on this, and I would be okay if we tabled it. I would be okay with that. Because first off, I don't want to approve it like it is. I'm not going to vote for it as it is. But I'd like for us, before we do decide on what we're going to do, come up with a plan that we know we can at least present to the commissioners in a joint meeting with them in an atmosphere sort of like we had for our retreat last Saturday. And they're going to be having their retreat in 2 weeks, I think. So it'll have to be sometime, maybe in February, that we get together and we just talk specifically facility needs and how we're going to handle this. We can't just say we want, us spend $500,000 on facility assessments and then give the bill to the commissioners and expect them to come up with that kind of money, because it's not going to happen, guys. We didn't get in this situation overnight, and we're not going to dig out of it overnight. It's going to take a plan. Now, what I would suggest that we do, whenever we do talk to the commissioners, if the board would allow us to do that, and give them a chance to sit and talk with us just on facility needs. Leave the other stuff out, just facility needs. Dedicate a couple of hours one evening or a Saturday morning. What are we going to do? But what I would like to see us do when we talk to them is this. Rather than bring it up and saying, well, we won't, we're going to spend all this money, what we would like to do is get you to buy in with us on this. Because after all, they're going to be the ones paying the bill. We don't have $100 million laying around, because if we did, we could be building schools and we could be doing a lot of things with it if we had it, so we don't have it. And since we don't have it, we're going to have to talk to the ones that can make it happen. Somehow they can make it happen. And truthfully, it's not our responsibility to make it happen. It is the commissioner's responsibility to make it happen. But I want them to buy in. And if we could bring them a plan such as, okay, guys, what we would like to do is, we know we didn't get in this overnight, and it's going to take a while to dig out. So why don't you split with us 50-50 on the fees associated with a facility assessment study. And let's do 5 schools a year for the next 5 years. And then after the facility study has been completed for the first 5 schools, we can infiltrate that money that we need for those needs into their next year's budget. And then let them deal with that on a year by year by year basis. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And we're dealing with an elephant here. You know that. I think I've heard somebody say the elephant in the room. We're dealing with an elephant. And the only way we're going to deal with it is one bite at a time. I don't want to see us throw out all of this money for a plan that may sit there for 6 or 7 years with no funding. And true, what you said, Mr. Whitkey, is true. We've got a foundation that we can build on and add to that. But think about this for a minute. And board members, I want you to think about this. Now, this was the year before I came back on the board. There was $11 million set aside for the qualified school construction bond money. $11 million. And we got that money. Now listen, here it is, 4 years later, and we still haven't got those projects finished. That was just $11 million. And any one of these 5 school groups would probably way exceed $11 million. So what makes us think that we can do more than $11 million in a year than we've taken us 4 years to do the $11 million, and we're still not through? Now, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. And see, here's the thing. If we do 5, we're still not going to be able to do it year after year after year like that, because they're not going to give us that kind of money it's going to take. If it was $200 million, that's $20 million a year for 10 years. And we're going to be building more schools, and there's going to be more problems adding on to it. More things are going to occur that we can't foresee now. But I'd like to see us break it down, meet with the commissioners, get their buy-in, and get them to spend 50% of the cost, whatever it might be. And even if they say, that's a good idea, let's do that. Well, instead of paying $8,500 a school now, this year, for 5 schools, next year it might be $9,500. But that's only $1,000. But what if $1 million in code changes take place between now and then? And we have to go back and revise the plans again. So all we're doing is just throwing more money after more money after more money, when I think that the plan needs to be pretty well set, and we need to have their buy-in. This is our plan. This is what we want to do, and go with it. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'll, as Mr. Harrison did, as far as the other items on the assessment there, the only one that I could vote for as it is would be the Mount Pleasant Middle School assessment, because that school is on tap for replacement, and hopefully if the bond goes through in November, then the money obviously for that's going to have to come from the bond. So I would be in favor of the item on the Mount Pleasant Middle School as it is presented, but the others, though, I would add them in as part of the 5 schools per year. And as far as Central Cabarrus, I don't want to see us spend $75,000 for a strategic plan on that school. I'll go along with the $8,500 facility assessment. I'd go along with that, no problem, just like I would the rest of the schools. And on the Glenn Center, I know that, and Rachel, I'm glad you're here tonight. This may not be what you want to hear as our executive director of the Education Foundation, but I think that we've got so many other needs right now that are so much more pressing. Even though I want to see it done, I want to see that auditorium. I can picture in my mind such a great community asset it was and can be again. But I think that it's going to be more money than we're going to be able to get anytime soon. And the schools that are in desperate needs of roofs and things like that has to take priority. Okay? And so that's where I'm at on those. And I hope that I'll give us something to be thinking about, for the board members to think about and decide on. So I think that's all I have for right now. I think it is, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shue, and we will take into consideration your thoughts. We'll get the rest of our comments, and then we'll go from there. And if you have something else to add, and this goes for Jeff and David, this is a lot of money. It's a big decision. So as if we finish up down here, if you've got something else you want to add, feel free to mic up. Rob, we'll go out to you and work our way in.
I appreciate this. This is an example of what we're looking for. Is that what we're?
No, that's just a copy of a section from the book. It was
But
just an example.
is that a scope, or is that kind of what the?
No, sir. It's all it is it was a hard copy of one of the chapters from the Union County.
What they
study.
did in Union County.
Yes, sir.
And
then a summary on the cost, a summary statement.
So what exactly are we going to get again for this per school? What are they going to provide us per school?
I keep saying it, and I don't know how else to frame it. The biggest thing, as a facilities person, is for me to know what is every piece of equipment in a school. Dave and I scratch our remaining hair every day saying, if we only had this information, we wouldn't be sending people out there to find it first, then to come back to talk about it.
Yes, it's an inventory.
It's an inventory.
Inventory of our facilities.
Step one, an inventory.
Okay.
And that's a great way of saying it. I should have come up with that for myself. Because we don't have that. I mean, as silly as it sounds, we've been around a long time, but honestly, we do not have a simple inventory. And granted, equipment changes and all, and you'd have to change it in the document. It'll be electronic. We can make those changes as time goes on. But it is a living document in that regard. You start with an inventory, so we know everything about that school, every piece of equipment in the school, and when we change it out, we make the correction and we update the document. But when somebody says, I'm having a problem, when a school calls in and says, I'm having a problem with air handler number 4, we don't have to send somebody out there to look at it. We just look at the study and say, okay, air handler number 4 is the following, and we can go from there. It sounds pretty rudimentary, but honestly, we have a very, very limited amount of information currently.
So it's not quite the facility study that we're, a comprehensive facility study. It's more an inventory that we're looking for.
Right. When you talk about comprehensive study, I think most people think of the master plan. What is the school going to become? What are we going to do to the school?
Not necessarily. I mean, what I did, I basically went on Google and did a check for what a comprehensive facility study would be. And it, again, runs the gamut of things.
Sure.
But they can get very detailed, and then they could be, I guess, fairly plain, but they go into things on ADA compliance, code, what ADA things do we need at these schools, what code changes do you need, roofing, exterior, structural, interior, HVAC, plumbing needs, electrical needs, fire, technology. And there's other ones that go into, what are the security needs at each school? What are the capacity issues? Technology is another big thing. We're trying to have one-to-one. What is the technology infrastructure? What are the needs there? What's that going to cost? And then energy conservation opportunities that I've seen. They come in with one that has a facility condition index, and a lot of these things do that. Is that something that we're
That is the second part of the document.
That is the second part of a document.
The first part is this inventory, because you have to start with that
Right.
to know what you have. And then the next part is, for example, we have a security assessment that's being done right now. We'll incorporate that information into the book, into the study. There's a lot of things that are going on that will be incorporated. But the second, if you will, the second part of and the charge to the consultant would be to look at all the things that you just spoke of. If you read the RFQ, and we could certainly provide that to you, that those things were in the RFQ that we sent out.
Okay, I'd like to have seen that.
I'd be happy to show that to you.
Yeah, my other issue is a big book like that sitting on a shelf is not something I really support either. I think if you're going to create something, you create a database of some sort.
Absolutely.
An electronic version, not a document sitting on a shelf. That's, to me, a fairly large waste of resources. You know, I'm again having issues with the costs. I certainly understand the need for an inventory for us to do our jobs, to come up with those lists. I mean, it almost looks like we have a staffing issue. We don't have enough staff to go out there and do a lot of this work. So again, I kind of haven't quite made my decision on it yet, but I understand the value. What would help me more if we did go through and did something like this, that it turns into what we talked about or approved last month with our policy. We have a policy that says we will adopt a long-range plan that identifies the facility needs of our system. I haven't seen one approved by this board, or when was the last one done, that actually has the list of projects.
It was 2010.
2010. That's before I was on the board. But so if we're going to do something, it's going to have to lead into that long-range plan, not using this facility assessment as our plan. So those are my comments.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Walter. Ms. Carpenter.
Okay, first of all, I want to check, am I getting feedback on my mic? I'm okay tonight, so I wanted to do that before I started speaking. First of all, I wanted to check, how many schools were we planning to do ourselves? You had said we were going to do some ourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
How many are we going to do?
We were talking about doing 13, a portion of the 13.
A portion, we're not going to do 13 ourselves?
We just spoke of the need for staff. If I have staff available, I will certainly use my staff to do it. My belief is that we can do some of them. I can only say that we are estimating costs here. We're estimating what flexibility and time we have to do this. One of the questions from the chairman last week was, how soon can we get this done? If how soon we can get this done is an issue, I would say that we will do none of them, that we will negotiate with the contract with the consultant and have him do all of them, because it will be a much more speedy affair. There's a lot of things at play that need to be worked out. We're asking for the flexibility to discuss this with a consultant and determine what the final cost will be, based on a lot of the needs that the board is talking about.
Well, you basically had said at one of our meetings, you would said, really, to get something like this done, you'd be looking at maybe 6 months for something, even a company to do it. And that's why I was saying, how many were we going to do? Because, to me, why could we not start doing ours ourselves, and we would have something to show the commissioners what we were doing? We have a document that we had showing we had 180 something or 180 million. We've got some document. We've got something that we could show them, but something that we could do ourselves to start with. We've got something to start from, but that's something we could do in the interim. So we've got something to start from, and that's why I was asking how many we were planning to do ourselves to start with. Now, I am in agreement that we need to do the things that have been mentioned on the bond. That, to me, is if the bond, but the schools that have been mentioned, to me, that should be the priority at this point, which to me are the things that have been mentioned, Mount Pleasant, the Colton Webb, and Central, because that's the things that the public are wanting to know, what are you going to do on those particular things? You know, they want to know what would happen. Looking at the example that was provided to us, you know, that's in the book, one of the concerns I have. Oh, I'm getting feedback. One of the concerns I have, looking at this document that we were provided, item number 20 on this page 2, it talks about an auxiliary gym is not available. This was a middle school. It says no auxiliary gym exists, recommending for existing gym to become an auxiliary gym and a new gym with supporting area to be constructed. We normally don't have auxiliary gyms in middle schools, do we? We do? We do have that?
Our new schools do, yes.
Do we have auxiliary gyms in our middle schools?
Yes, ma'am.
We do?
Yes.
Well, that's what, I didn't know we had but anyway, but that's been one of the questions that has been talked about that we shouldn't have. So I'm scared if we put a document out front, we're going to get shot at with something like that. But one of the things I would say, do what we can do right now and emphasize ourselves to go with the things that are right now have been proposed for the bond, get that done quickly as possible, do what we can do, and then come back and maybe revisit this, but do the things that we need to do on those existing schools with children in them. I agree at this point, whatever documentation that has been done or work that has been done possibly on the Glenn Center, utilize whatever's been done. Again, I had heard there'd been some structural stuff done on that. That amount to me seemed high.
I think we're going to get to that. I mean, that's why we set it up the way we did, so we can go talk about that.
But at this point, I cannot, I've got heartburn with that amount. I want to see us do whatever we can do at this point ourselves. I know it's something that we need to do, but I would rather see us do what we can do, or if it is staff, what we need to we could bring in somebody. I kind of go with Rob's thing. We could bring in somebody and pay them less than $332,000 to maybe do something like this. So I would maybe lean towards that to let them start working on this than $332,000. So I'm going to listen, but to me, I want to do these other things first before I start building a book like that and see what we can do.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Shoemaker?
Well, I think everybody has brought up some really good points, and I've been listening and paying attention, but at the same time, as you know, at the retreat and in last week's meeting, I came out very passionately in support of this. Dr. Shepard and Ms. Klutz basically have said that we have the money in the fund balance for these specific projects, and that it won't affect the way our 8%, I don't believe, I think we're in good shape there. In order for us to have meaningful discussions, with our commissioners, because my belief is we've got to collaborate with our commissioners, much like Mr. Shue's argument that we need to have a plan with them. But we need to go before them with a document that allows us to have a structured discussion. We can't ask them for what ifs, because that's what's deteriorating, causing issues now. Every time we ask for what ifs or to discuss what ifs, they don't want to talk about that. They want to know, how do we come together with a plan? This document will help structure out expenditures to mitigate some of our deferred maintenance issues. So it won't have a complete schedule in it, but it will have a schedule in it that will allow us to say, in buckets of time, we need to accomplish these types of things. Is that correct?
That is, as we talked, and really Dave should speak to the issue of the RFQ, because we addressed many of the things that Mr. Walter brought up. It's really looked at in two levels of work. One is the basic inventory of equipment. That is something that has been stagnated here simply because of a lack of staff time. Secondly, it's really the consultants who look at the ADA code, the energy code, all the things that apply today to the existing schools, that if we want to bring them up to standard, these are the things that would have to be done. And that's not unlike what we've been doing. The difference is that they're looking at it in real dollars based on the exact detail of what they find in the school at that time. Mm-hmm. As we've tried to explain, the $180 million document represents our best estimate of costs based on historical data. That's as far as we can offer to go. We have not had the opportunity nor the time to analyze it and do it in detail that these architects and engineers would be doing it. I think that's the benefit of hiring an outside consultant. You can put people on staff, that's fine too. I think one of the reasons we didn't push in that direction was that a third-party independent position, if you're looking at assessments and making a call as to whether something needs to be replaced or not and why, a third-party position is oftentimes looked at much better, much stronger than somebody from an internal perspective has something to say. So.
But, I gave y'all some heavy reading, and in that reading, you'll notice that they talked about one of the school districts, Prince George, Maryland. And in Prince George, Maryland, they did one of these surveys, and if you notice in there, they had a graph of how they divide the schools out according to age, and then they went to try to attack some of the issues by age. But they were using a facilities assessment study to begin that discussion. Then they used the 2% plus a fraction to try to mitigate the deferred maintenance over X number of years. All of us know that this is not going to be an instant fix. It will go over multiple terms of board members for us to ever get caught up on our deferred maintenance. It's not going to happen in the next 3 years of my term, and I don't know how long it will take to get through it. But we need to begin the process to get us in position so that we can begin to conquer it. Our staff is not comprised of enough people or planners to handle a study of this nature and execute it to the quality level that we have there from the Union County study, but from other studies that are existing out there, and we know that there's evidence for them. I made a phone call to a gentleman at Jones, Langs, and LaSalle to ask him for information about maintenance benchmarks and trying to get other information that I could use to help create some kind of discussion as we go forward to not only with this board but with our commissioners. And in that discussion, the first thing he asked me, did I have a facilities assessment survey? And he said those are vital before you can begin any discussions about where you are in maintenance. And I realize that this is a big price tag. I don't think we need to ask the commissioners for any more money. I think we need to take it upon ourselves to be the type of leaders that we are. We are elected to lead. We are elected to take these taxpayers and give them the information they need so that they can understand where we are, so we can craft together a community document. After we get this document, we can craft a community solution to this problem. This assessment survey is only one step. It's a multi-pronged approach. It's just one of many things that we'll need to continue to have dialogue with our commissioners, but we've got to have that dialogue, and we've got to break it down into several different types of components. Out of this document will also come, we're going to have more rigor in our CMMS system. We have to have more rigor in the way we discipline our user group to respond to our maintenance people, so that they're not causing them to have emergency work orders all the time, but they're being disciplined in what really is an emergency. So there's other things that we can begin to work on. But this document begins to craft an argument that we can have with the commissioners and say, all right, look, here it is. Here's what our needs are. Now, how do we go through the process of crafting the arguments with each other and developing a plan that we can take to the taxpayer and get their buy-in on? Because that's what we're elected to do. We got a problem. We need to all address it instead of coming up with my plan and your plan and somebody else's plan. We need to have our plan as a community. And this document is one of the steps that helps create that. It's not going to be the end all. And in the form that it's in, it won't be a printed form. It will be a data form. There will be, I guess, all types of DVDs or CDs or whatever you want to call it. There'll be thumb drives and everything else to go with it. But we'll be using it to manage how we go and attack these buildings and get this deferred maintenance behind us. The other issue that we have that's coming up on us, and if we don't get this one done, when we build that new school, and I don't know how many square feet it's going to be, but we're going to have to dial in maintenance dollars to support that new school. In our discussion last Saturday, in our meeting, we came up with a measure of 0.68% over for asset values for maintenance, which is where we are right today. 0.68%. Now, if you have a $100,000 house, 0.68% is $680 a year that you put into the maintenance of that house. I don't know who can maintain a house for $680 a year. Now, that doesn't count energy usage and all that, but that's all your repairs, including replacing appliances and everything else to the maintenance of that house. That's the kind of funding we're getting right now. So we have a problem. This is the beginning of identifying how to get through the problem. And we're not going to get there unless we have the information. If we try to split the cost with the commissioners, there's going to be all this hubbub about the school system begging for some more money. We don't need to beg them for money. We've identified that we have the capability of doing this, and all of these studies. Now, I'm not going to argue for the other studies right now. I'm just arguing for this one, but I will have things to say about the other studies. But we've identified it. Dr. Shepard's identified it. Ms. Klutz has identified it. And the two of them together are the leadership team that we're leaning on to give us good information to how to make this, to what decisions to make. And I think that they provide us the data we need. So at that, I think we should go with this study. If it takes 6 months to get it, that means we have it in midsummer. Well, guess what? After midsummer, we're no longer in any budget discussions. We are free to begin talking about a plan. How do we, so that by the time we get into budget discussions for 15, 16, we're literally we could have a plan together, a literal plan with our commissioners, and we could be walking hand in hand. But we got to have the document to have that discussion. And I think for us to dally around and wait is wrong for us, and it's wrong for our taxpayers because we're getting farther and farther behind, and our debt service, it's really not debt service, but it is debt service because it's deferred maintenance. So it becomes a debt service. It's going at an exponential rate. If it's 2 to 3% a year, it just keeps growing. And that's $3.6 million more dollars a year that we got farther behind on. So if you can begin attacking a study, attacking the issue and come up with a plan, then we can resolve this. This is why I went for election, was because I identified early on when I got on the budget committee 3 years ago that there were issues that I thought I could make a difference with. This is where I'm bringing my expertise in, and I feel like we can make a difference here. And that's why I ran. I want to educate the kids, but I'm not an educator. But I am a maintenance person, and I have been in that world, and I know what it takes, and I know we had a grievous issue. End of my conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. This is somewhat, I'm going to keep my comments very brief. This is the professional world that I live in, so I know what we're doing and what we're getting. I have a difficult time articulating it. I was trying to explain it to my wife, and I had a hard time with that because people were asking her, what are you guys doing, spending $500,000 to tell you what's wrong? We can tell you what's wrong. Everybody in the district thinks they can tell you what's wrong, and they probably can, I guess, to some degree. But the bottom line is the definition of deferred maintenance is maintenance that should have already taken place and has not happened yet and is not in the foreseeable future to take place. And we have a lot of it. And what we're going to do is try to identify and get that plan together so that we can have meaningful conversation with the people that we are partners with in this, and that's our commissioners, so that we can, we're not in any way, shape, or form trying to take this document and dump it off on their lap and say, hey, we expect a check. Because we know, as Mr. Shue said, that is not happening. But what it is going to do is give us a blueprint of where we are and how we can get to where we want to go based on the information that's provided. There are a couple things that I don't see in here that I think are needed, that we, as you guys are discussing with the consultants, and one of them is just the remaining useful life. And for some, maybe I've just missed it, but for the sample that you gave us, I just don't see it. And that's one piece that they have specifically asked us for, to get on a schedule, so that, part of the information we're going to gather is that chiller that we've identified with serial number. We know who the manufacturer is. Well, by the way, in 2021, and that's the end of its useful life. And I just didn't see that. But one other aspect is code requirement and code compliance. And that's, I don't know, I had this conversation with one of our commissioners, and I asked him if he knew who writes the North Carolina code. And, no fault to his own, it's not his world. He didn't know, but it's the Department of Insurance. And if you don't know that, that's who writes the code. Something happens, everybody freaks out and calls their attorney, then they get the Department of Insurance involved, they change the code. That's the way it works. Well, we know if we get something identified in our document that's a code violation or something that does not meet current code, there's a potential there for something to happen. Well, we've now been noticed that, hey, we might better do something about that. And that's the only way we're going to know that. These guys aren't going to know that running in and out and doing their routine maintenance and working on our facilities. No fault of their own, but that's just not in their view and not in their area of expertise. And the other thing I wanted to do, because I do live in this world and I am a third party that provides consulting services, not to this depth and degree, but there's plenty of reason why it's an outside person. They're not trying to sell us the roof or the new floor. They're just trying to tell us the status of what we have and when it's going to wear out. At the end of the day, they don't care whether we replace it or not. That's not their job. That's not in their view. They're just giving us a status update of what we have. So, with that being said, and that actually was longer than I had anticipated being, but we can move forward. We've got a suggestion from a board member to do something a little bit different from Mr. Shue, and I didn't know if there were any other comments that anybody wanted to make before we entertain the thought process that Mr. Shue presented us. Anybody? Okay. With that being said, Lynn, would you like to offer some sort of formal motion, or do we want to just discuss it for just a second?
What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is I may not have a second on it. I don't want to see us take action on this as it's presented tonight, because I think we do have some opposition with the way it is presented. Although, Barry, I appreciate your hard work, and I am so glad that you're part of this board, because you bring another facet to this board that has been very detrimental, and I, for one, appreciate that. You and I are friends. We're going to be friends, regardless of how this goes. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion that we table this until we meet with the commissioners. And like I said, we've done talk to them. We give them a piece of paper, but I dare say not a single one of them have read through it. And I also dare say that many people that had that study right there done, $400,000 study sitting there, have gone through it page by page to know what's in it. But I'd like to give the commissioners an opportunity to talk with us and for them to agree with us that we've got a problem. And they will agree with us that we've got to come up with a plan together as a group of elected officials, the eyes and the ears of the public, watching out for their money, making sure that we're doing the absolute best we can to give them the most for every dollar we spend. And so I mentioned to Dr. Shepard, maybe we can get a meeting scheduled sometime real soon. That's one thing that all of us elected officials do, is we do a lot of meetings. And so to try to fit another meeting in is definitely not going to be an easy thing. But the magnitude of what we're talking about here deserves the commissioner's attention, and it deserves us sitting down and talking. And then now, if we do this, we reach out to them and we ask them to meet with us and agree with us, as I said earlier, well, we're well on our way to solving this problem. But now if we ask to meet with them and they give us a negative reply, or we don't want to discuss it no further, you just keep bringing us your plans, and we'll just keep putting your plans off, or that kind of thing. See, I've never said that I'm against the assessments, because I know it needs to be done. I've never said I was against it. But I just want the buy-in from the commissioners. I just want them to buy in and say that, yes, we know we've got a problem, and we really want to help you get it solved. So let's meet, let's talk about it, whether they, as you suggested, my plan, it's just my plan versus whoever's plan. I just want to make sure what we do is the right thing. And I think just jumping in there and saying, yes, Mr. Wiki, we're going to give you $332,000, you work out the best deal you can, and discussing this 2 times with such a multi-million-dollar end result, I think would not be the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned. So, like I said, if you decide to bring it before a vote as it is, my vote is no. But if we table it, that'll give us more time to talk. So that's what my motion is, and if you want to call for a second, we'll see how it goes from there. And then if we don't get a second or we don't get enough, then we'll just vote on it.
Okay, well, I tell you what, hold your motion. I want to make a comment. I guess, well, you've made a motion to table. Before I ask for a second, I'm going to make a comment. At our vice chair meeting, there was a comment made, and I believe it was by their chair, of potentially having our 2 boards sit and meet. If I'm remembering that correctly, it might have been her, maybe it was somebody else, but I think it was Chairman Poole. And so that thought came up, and I support that. I think that's a good thing for our 2 boards to do. So the other thing that needs to be noted, at that meeting, we did talk about maintenance. So we in our talk here tonight, we've talked a little bit about, well, we do have deferred maintenance, and we do have a lot. There is some recognition there. I mean, it's not completely falling on deaf ears. So I don't want to give the indication that it is, because the county manager and our chair, at that time, it's not the current vice chair, but at that time, the previous chair and vice chair of the county commission indicated that they wanted to talk about maintenance issues between now and the budget cycle, and then having some maintenance dollars increased for next year. Can't hold them to that. That was just part of the discussion. So I just wanted to make sure this board knew, at least that I don't think we're trying to just dump a document on them and walk away. But is there further discussion? We're going to have a little further discussion while there is a motion on the floor. Go ahead, Ms. Carpenter.
The only thing that I would like to add, I think if a meeting is held, the only comments I would like to make is, if a meeting is held, that we go to the commissioners and we make sure that questions are asked, what information they actually would like to make sure that they have, that what they really want, what they are looking for. Are they looking for life expectancy? What kind of information they want to get? Because I have heard from some commissions, and I'm not going to mention which commissioners' names, but they are not getting information maybe that they have asked for. So make sure when everybody's in the room with them that the questions are asked. What information are you wanting to have? The other thing, and this is just me saying this, I really don't want to jeopardize any kind of monies that we are asking for at this point by saying, and oh, by the way, we want some more money. I would rather say, if this study is done, it's already been mentioned that we have already maybe appropriated money. I don't want to jeopardize any other money that we have already asked for, i.e., or et cetera. We have already asked for money possibly for salaries. We have asked for money for this. We've asked for money for that. I don't want to jeopardize any of those requests we have already made. This is just me. I'm one vote. But I don't want to ask for that. I'm just saying that because I feel like this salary money we have asked for and the requests we have made right now for building those schools are more important to me right now, and that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. And
I was going to, just for the sake of, so we can continue this discussion officially, I will second Lynn's motion,
Okay,
just so we can have this discussion.
thank you. Mr. Harrison.
I was willing to second the motion as well, and offering the two kind of friendly amendments to it. And again, I don't know if they're feasible, so I'm just opening up a discussion about whether or not we could take these approaches. Would it be feasible or advisable in, as a second to Mr. Shue's motion and Mr. Phillips's second, to to go ahead and give Mr. Whitkey the approval to proceed with a RFQ, I believe you called it, Mr. Whitkey? Because there, to my understanding, I could be wrong, that there is no financial commitment in just simply requesting qualifications. Is that the case?
I think I'll let the attorney address that, board's attorney, because
Yeah.
I've been on that side of it, and I won't answer that question.
All right, so I don't want to get necessarily too in deep, but I wanted to make some kind of proposal that would give you the leeway to proceed and get something moving, get something going, so that as we discuss matters with the county commission in this detail, we could know that in the meantime you're making progress, because I know time is of the essence, and that's one suggestion. But maybe I'll stop just for a moment and ask
Well, can I also just say
our attorney to clarify that.
before
But
you
again,
speak,
if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'll withdraw that.
there is an
suggestion.
RFQ on the street, just so the board understands that. Per the request of the board chair, we issued an ad on 2 weeks ago, Sunday, for this study, and asked for responses from firms. That is done always with the indication that, or the intent to offer a contract at some point to those firms. I don't think, from what I'm hearing this evening, that no one is saying we're never going to consider doing a study, but there may be caveats to it, there may be changes to that. That's fine. I'm just saying, because of the costs involved with doing this for firms, I think in all honesty, if we're looking to simply put a price tag on something, I don't think that's appropriate. I think if you honestly plan to enter into a contract with one of the firms at some point, then we'll be getting that information in the relatively near future. Do you think it's a week? Okay.
I just want to emphasize that you're able to move along while we have these other
Yeah, I mean, we weren't going
discussions.
to make any decisions on it, but we were just gathering the information.
It's just, an RFQ is not legally binding. The board can decide to reject all the proposals. But just to restate what I think Mr. Wicky's saying, it's not a good practice to routinely get RFQs and then take no action, because the people often that are submitting those proposals say, this is a lot of work, and if you're just doing it because you're curious, I'm not going to submit an RFQ next time. So there is a danger. I think it's usually a good idea to get a sense that this is something you want to do, and if there's a strong sense that this is not something, I think we would tell folks, maybe stop work. We don't need to continue with that. Again, legally, it's not a commitment, but I think you jeopardize relationships with folks. It's a little like putting out a project for bid. You could legally decide not to accept any of the bidders on a school construction project, but those contractors are going to be unexcited about doing the next bid if they spend all the time, submit it, and then you say, we're not going to build the school after all. You have that legal right, but I think there can be consequences in the
Okay, so do we have any other discussion about the motion that has been seconded, which is to table
Right.
the vote on the study?
The second portion of my suggestion would be that it not be open-ended, but that we bring the matter back up by a March meeting or an April meeting for us to make a final decision if the county commission, hopefully in conjunction with the county commission's decision, but that we put our own date within this proposal so that within 60 days we act. Because as Mr. Shoemaker implied earlier, I came here to act too. And I would rather act in a way that allows us to go back and tweak a decision and make it a good decision as we move forward than to not act. We need data. We need to be able to move forward on these crucial needs for the system. But I want to make sure that if we are able to do this on our own, that we would do so within a certain period of time, but in the meantime, do our utmost to negotiate with the county to participate in this approach.
Can I just address the procedural piece of that? Because under our board policy 2340, we've technically changed a motion to table to a motion to defer consideration. They're essentially the same, but one difference is that a motion to defer, that motion will die automatically after 100 days. And I think I hear you could set an earlier date, but under that, if there's a motion to defer that can be debated, of course, which it is, and amended, which I think we're discussing, if that passes, then it is automatically deferred, and any board member can then vote to bring it back, and if you get a majority vote, you could do it.
And I guess the crux of my suggestion is to have it on an agenda in a certain period of time, and I'm just picking 60 days, so that we would come back to this discussion and cast a vote to make a decision at that time. Because we obviously need time to if we choose to pursue the negotiations with the commission, they need time to consider themselves and to make a commitment.
Okay, so I guess I'm maybe I'm the only one that's slightly confused. But so you're asking for a motion instead of to table. We're changing. He's changing it to a motion to defer.
Under our
Okay.
board policy,
Okay.
they're very similar, but technically, there's not a motion to table, which is the Roberts Rule procedure. Our local version of parliamentary procedure replaces that with a motion to defer. So what I'm
Okay.
construing Mr. Hsu to be saying is, let's defer consideration, and Mr. Harrison's amendment may be to say, let's set it instead of 100 days to have it expire in 60 days. The other possible amendment would, you can also defer to a specific time. So you can say, I want to defer this until the March board meeting or whatever date. If you want to move it to a set time, that is a motion that's also allowed. So those are kind of your procedural options are generally defer until someone else brings it up or to move consideration to a specific time.
Okay, well, Mr. Hsu, since it was your original motion, we'll go back to,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'll do, I'll just modify or amend the motion, and I would like to make a motion that we defer this particular item here on facility assessments. And I don't know, do we want to do them all, or just do all but Mount Pleasant, or?
no, we are strictly discussing the facility needs
just on
assessment.
9.1, just on
Yes.
9.1.
Yes.
Are we going to vote on the others?
Yes. Well, we will have discussion. You may end up, somebody may offer a motion to defer those as
Okay.
well. We'll cross
Okay.
that bridge when it comes
All right,
to
well,
it.
my motion is that we defer the facility assessment study 9.1. Now, let me make sure, is that if we defer it, does it automatically fall off in 180 days?
100, if you make a motion to defer, it falls off after 100 days if no one places it on an
Unless we put
agenda.
a specific time on it?
Right.
Okay. Well,
It's 100 days. If no one brings it up and it doesn't get put on an agenda after 100 days, then it would automatically be gone.
Okay.
Now, and again, as a practical matter, it's then off, but staff could bring the recommendation again 6 months from now. So as a practical matter, that doesn't matter that much because the superintendent can add new things to the agenda. He can put it back on. But it would not, technically, a board member would not have the right, when it's in that 100-day period, any board member can ask that it be placed back on the agenda, and it would automatically get back on the agenda. So it gives the right of any board member to bring a motion forward to revive it. Of course, you need a majority vote to actually then have it on the agenda.
okay, well, I just wanted to make sure, because we don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the budget talks for next year, and so we don't want to put it off for no 180 days. I'd like to see us do this just as quickly as we can meet with the commissioners and get the feel as to where they are and where their mindset is on helping us get this project done. And if they, like I said, if they decide that they don't want to do it, and or they say, yeah, we're behind you, but we're not going to help you pay for it. No problem. We got the money set aside. We'll pay for it ourselves. That's no problem either. But anyway, just to restate the motion, I would like to make a motion that we defer 9.1 facility assessment study for at least 90 days anyway. Okay? Does that make sense now? Is that okay? Mark?
Yes.
Because like I said, we don't want to stretch it out 180 days or 100 days.
When you say at least
Well,
90 days, let me just
But
I think
take
you
the
need a
least
hard,
out.
I
take
think
it
you
out.
need a hard and
think,
fast number.
I actually think my recommendation is just to defer consideration, because that gives you flexibility to bring it back on anytime you want to in the next 100 days.
Well, that's basically what I did with my original motion, except
I
I
think-
used table.
I think it is. And that's why I think, although it's
Okay.
a different caption, and it becomes important in terms of the comments about bringing it back, I think just a general motion to defer consideration is just like a table, except for the fact that after 100 days it's gone. So
Okay, that's the
I think
motion. He's got it.
that's your motion.
Okay, there's a motion
I'll second it
and
again.
there's a second. Okay. So is everybody clear on the motion? I've been looking this way.
Before
Sorry,
we-
guys, because
yeah.
Mark's down there, but I didn't mean to ignore you guys down here. Mark, can you restate the motion for us,
It is
please?
a motion to defer consideration of agenda item 9.1. There is no date.
It's just a
There's
motion.
there's
to
no
defer.
request for a meeting with the commissioners, or it's just a defer?
It's, the motion is to just defer 9.1.
Okay. Just,
Now,
that's
as a
what the
side
mo-
note, I
If that, I mean, I think it's a good idea to have the joint meeting. I agree with that. I don't think that we should be asking for this funding. I think if this is something we need to be doing, we need to go ahead and pay for it.
Well, the way this was crafted was we were going to pay for all these.
Because then you get into the budget.
That's the way this
If
is
you
always
defer it,
been.
we're in the
The
budget.
motion does not have anything
to
to do with funding. The motion is purely to defer consideration of 9.1.
But if we defer it, it's going to end up into the budget discussions.
The intent of all of these, all 5 of these items was that we, out of fund balance, were going to pay for them all. We were never going to involve the commissioners in the request, because this is our house, and we got to tell them what we need in our house, and they now can help us with our house. So that's the way it's been intended.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it's going to get confusing if we're, in another month, we start our budget process. Those discussions and those items may be coming up in just general discussions, and so will this. It'll just be confusing, in my opinion.
Well, we will go through our normal budget process. If this motion fails, then we're going to talk about approving the study. If it does not fail, if we pass the table, then we're going to bring it back at some point in time. The administration will come back to us, as long as we do it within 180 days, which it sounds like 100 days, excuse me, and it sounds like that's what we're going to do. But that's the current question, whether we want to defer, or if that motion gets defeated, then we're going to move on to talk about whether we want to approve it or not. But currently, we have a motion, and I don't think I've heard a second yet on that motion. Jeff?
I will second Lynn's motion to
Okay.
defer.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to defer.
Okay, and I, like a point of privilege, to reflect in the notes that I definitely do not want to have the commissioners pay for it. Point of privilege, I would like for the reflection for the notes to prove, I do not want the commissioners to pay for this study, and I want it to be done.
Well, that's fine. We're not asking them to pay for it. We're merely, well, Mr. Shue, and with a second from Dr. Phillips, is just merely asking us as a body to defer discussion and approval of spending fund balance money to do the study. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. And Dr. Shepard would like to make a comment.
It will be my goal, if you pass this, to move as quickly as possible to get the meeting arranged so that we can bring this back to you in your February meeting. I do not want to wait. I want to move quickly.
That's true. Can I just explain or give my comment on this? I partly seconded just because I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to discuss it. At the working meeting last week, I had asked, what we were going to do to get buy-in from the county, because obviously if they don't think that we're using the right standards, to judge the quality of the school facilities, then it's pointless to be doing it. So I think that's a key part, is to get buy-in. What I do not want at that meeting is what we had last year when we went to a retreat where I thought we were going to talk about our school needs. And instead, we had a 5-year plan displayed in front of us that showed $1 million in capital going to the schools for each of the next 5 years. And that was the end of the discussion. I will also not be lectured to by the commissioners to tell me how to do estimates on the cost of construction when I think I've got more experience than most of them do, and I believe we have that kind of experience also on this board besides me. I also expect to be not lectured to about that we don't have the feelings of the taxpayers in mind, when in fact our job is to tell them what are the needs of the school children of this district in order to get an education.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. We have a motion and a second, and I'm going to call for a vote. For all those in favor to table or defer, I'm still using the wrong word, to defer 9.1 for 100 days. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. So that was 5-2 in favor of deferment. Okay, we're going on to, I'm sorry, Mr. Walter and myself. Okay, we're going to go on to 9.2, and this may be all, we may be here all night now that I'm thinking about talking about these individually, but I think it was important by the comments that I heard last week, some on the Glenn Center, some about Mount Pleasant. Everybody was in a little different spot that I thought it behooved us to talk about them individually. We've already gotten some comments tonight on the ones that are coming next, but we'll start with Central Cabarrus, and you'll have another opportunity to comment.
Mr. Chair, can I just short circuit this?
Right.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this for 100 days, and after our discussion with the commissioners, we'll bring it back.
For 9.2?
Yep.
Okay, I've got a motion to defer
Can I just
9.2.
Just because I know you put it, I think just a motion to defer consideration, I'm a little concerned about the 400 days, that it creates some impression that it is pushed back for 100, which I don't believe is your intent.
Okay.
If you just say
just say
defer,
Okay.
it stays alive for 100 days, which I think is your
Yes.
intention both on the prior motion and this one. So just, I think, and again, we can, if it's uncomfortable, we can try to revise your own board policy and call it tabling, but just defer consideration, I think, accomplishes what you want to do.
Okay, well, I guess I have there's a motion, but I've got a comment. I would like to pull out the Mount Pleasant study out of that deferment. I'd like to pull the Mount Pleasant study out of that deferment.
Well, I was just doing 9.2. I was
Okay.
going to take one at a time.
Okay,
stay with the,
that's fine.
version.
No, I thought I misunderstood you. Okay, I need a second on deferment of 9.2.
I'll second that one.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on 9.2. Does anybody have any comment on deferment of 9.2? Go ahead, Ms. Carpenter.
Okay, I have to disagree. As I mentioned earlier, the Cabarrus, that 9.2, 9.3, and 9.5, those all have to do with the possibility of a bond. Those are ones that children are in those schools, and to me, those are crucial to get the data and the information we need. We need to get those done yesterday. And I have to, I cannot stress, no one sitting at this table has been through a bond. Now, I have said this over and over to y'all. Now, I hate to keep repeating myself, but I cannot stress to you how important it is to have this data. And if you don't, I'm going to be sitting here after the bond, and I'm going to say, I told you so. And you know, men, you don't like to hear women tell you this. And I'm going to be saying it to you. And I don't want to have to do that. And so we need this data now. And I'm just telling you this because I know I've been through them both ways. I've been through when they've been lost, and I've been on the commission side. I know what we need. I know what you got to go out and tell the community, and we do not have the data to tell Central whether they need to, if we're going to do a cafeteria, whether we're going to do, we don't know what we can do at Central. And am I correct in that? You could not tell them what we could do for a library, what we could do for a cafeteria, what we could do for a gymnasium. Am I correct in that assumption, Mr. Wick?
You're absolutely correct. And
Okay.
your worries are the same as mine, because for a bond referendum, you should have many months in front of that to prepare
Many
and
months.
talk to the community.
And we do not have that.
You're running out of time quickly.
And this is why I'm saying those three items. And if that one fails, I have another motion I'd like to put on the table, but I will not confuse the issue with it.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion before I call the question?
Well, I would like to ask Mr. Whitkey, along the lines that Carolyn is talking about, how long will it take to carry out this study? Because if we defer it for a month or more, is that going to then, let's assume that let's see, in a week and a day, the commissioners vote to go forward with the bond issue. So now we are going to have this information, just as Carolyn said, in order to explain to the voters what exactly we're going to do. How long will it take us to carry out this study?
If you recall, part of the difficulty with most of this is that we need assessments. There is an issue. There are many folks who feel that there's parts of Central Cabarrus that should not be eliminated, that should be retained and reused. The study may look at several different things. It may look at a variety of schemes or designs that would take place over time to replace the pieces that need to be replaced. There may also be a study that, for good reason, you may want to look at, the board may choose to ask the consultant to look at a total replacement of the school. Because in the long run, that may be the best investment to be made. I don't know. That's what the study is for. But in all honesty, with the assessment that needs to be done as well, and the fact that we have no survey information on the site, that has to be done immediately or as soon as we can get it done. There are a number of engineering things that need to take place before the consultants can really roll up their sleeves and start design work. I'm 4 months. Gentlemen. 5 months. I mean, it's. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, again, it always depends on what the end result is desired. It really could be as few as 2 weeks to as long as 4 months. I would be expecting something at that dollar amount to be 2 months. But again, it
level of detail and all of it. Yeah.
The devil's in the details.
Yes, it is.
Right. And the current plan is that if there is a bond election, it would be in November. Is that right?
Currently, what we've been informed by the commission through the bond council, that May is out and it is November.
Okay, so just thinking through this, let's say that we wait until the next meeting, thinking positively, the commissioners give a thumbs up to letting the bond go to the voters. Use Dave's pessimistic number of 4 months, and that's February, March, April, May, June. So we would have results in June, so then we have July, August, September, October for the voters to hash through what we're proposing. So to me, that seems, okay, we could wait a month, so I'm willing to support the deferral, but I'm also firmly believe what Carolyn said, which is we have to do this if there's going to be a bond.
But one of the things too, if you're saying 3 months, but you got to get out and promote, and 3 months to get people to advertise, to do this. You got to give people, you got to be advertising this. You got to be advertising this 5 or 6 months to sell this thing. And you can't be selling something if you don't know what you're selling. I mean, when they were selling the bonds, you had your bond people for almost 6 months or longer promoting what they were doing. They weren't just doing that for 3 months. That bond, you called the people that were doing, well, one of them you can't, but the other one, they were selling that bond for a year. I mean, a long time. The other thing, we're talking about the bond, but if they go with the pay as you go, they want to know what they're paying as they go with. I mean, if the other thing goes through, the same thing, they got to know what they're going to give money for. So it's the same thing. They want to know what they're going to, they said, well, if we do the school, but then if you've got other small projects, the Coulter and Webb or the other one, if we're going to build a building or we're going to do this, they may have 1.2 million or they may have this to do an addition on to something, but they got to know what it is.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. I guess my opinion is this is information we need whether the bond passes or fails.
We got to have it.
But anyway, there's a motion and a second to defer 9.2. So all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay, I counted 1, 2, 3,
I'm opposed to
4. Right, I'm sorry. I'm going on. I heard more no's than yays, and I'm counting the no's. 1, 2, 3,
I'm no.
4. You are yay or? Okay, so Ms. Monroe, that the deferment of 9.2 is that motion was defeated 4-3. So now we need a motion and a second to see if we want to go ahead and pass
I would
doing
like,
9.2.
Can we break it into smaller pieces?
Well, and I don't know whether I can do this since we've got it. I'm going to make a motion, whether it goes or not. I would like to make a motion that we approve 9.2, 9.3, and 9.5. I'm just putting that in form of a motion.
3,
9.2, 9.3, and 9.5. Now, I may not get a second for it, but we go ahead and approve those.
I'll give a second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. So now let's discuss combining 9.2, 9.3, and 9.5. So just for clarification, the one that has been left out is the Glenn Center. So is everybody following along in your program? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Rob, do you have any comments on
Explain
combining those
why again
three?
are we taking off the Glenn Center when we've got that listed?
Well, we're going to come back and discuss that. She just has made a motion that we combine the two and bring those together and go ahead and give it an up or down.
Mr. Chairman, on 9.5 there for the Mount Pleasant study, as I mentioned in my initial talk, I have no problem with that because I see the need of doing that. But I agree with Mr. Shoemaker as he had intended to make a motion to defer 9.2, and I still feel like that we need to defer 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4, those three. And I say if you call it for a vote tonight, I'll oppose those three, but I will be for 9.5. So if you mix them up like that, then I don't want to vote against the Mount Pleasant Middle simply because I think it needs to be done. So I'd like to, keep that one separate, and maybe discuss that one just for a minute or two and see where everybody is on 9.5. And then if that be the case, if everybody is okay with that one, then that would leave the other 2, 3, and 4. If you wanted to lump them together, that's fine. But if you wanted to defer them, that's fine.
Okay. Well, 2, we're going to have to readdress it. I mean, I guess that question's already been decided of whether we're going to defer that one. We've already decided. Now, I suppose somebody could make another motion on it. Carolyn, based on Mr. Shue's comments, would you like to reword your motion?
One? All right. Well, it looked like 9.2 was going to go anyway because it failed with the thing. All right. How about if I do it this way? Let me withdraw you'd have to withdraw yours. You
I'll withdraw the second.
Can I make just a procedural suggestion?
Yes.
It may be, I think we broke them into separate items just because there were some differing views. It may be easier to call, to see if there's a motion just to approve 9.2 and vote on it. Because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time combining.
I'll withdraw mine. So what I'll do is I'll make a motion to approve 9.2.
Okay, there's a motion to approve 9.2. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'm a little scared to call for further discussion, but I feel obligated. Does anybody have anything else they want to say before we call the question? Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve 9.2, as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. So that was 5-2. Ms. Monroe, 9.2 passes 5-2. And we're going to move on to 9.3.
I make a motion we approve 9.3.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve 9.3. Is there any discussion on 9.3?
I have one point. 9.3 cannot go forward without 9.4 because you don't have anywhere to put the children. Once you do the master plan for Culture and Web, what are you going to do? You have nowhere for Surge, so you can do your master plan for it, but there's no way to execute. So that's why 9.4 is in there, because that's the execution layer of the construction for 9.3. So if you don't do 9.4, or if you do 9.3 and you don't do 9.4, then you have no options available to you because the site is too small to put a whole bunch of mobile units on it.
Mr. Wiki, would you like to comment on that? I guess in my mind, we're doing the study. I mean, this isn't the execution of the plan, but I mean, he makes a point that probably needs to be discussed. Do you want to comment on that?
I know we certainly spoke about the Glenn Center as surge space for the inner city or the Union, try that again, Concord-based schools. And it makes good sense. I mean, it's available space that we can utilize. The difficulty, as Dave and I have talked about, is that the Glenn Center is going to take quite a bit of work, and I think we can look at a portion of it to house. The good of it is that the Culture and Web is not a large group of children. We're not talking about 1,000 kids, so it would be a smaller group of children to be relocated. I do know from talking with my staff that we did have a number of mobile units on that site at one time. Kelly, do you recall how many we had? I don't have that information with me. I can find out. But, it would allow us to place a number of units. But a lot depends on what the master plan suggests and what we take down initially versus, in other words, you always look at that versus cost because you might be able to take down a lot more of the building that needs to come down. Do that work if we could get the children off-site and reap the benefits of it from a cost standpoint. So,
now, can the master plan look at that to see if it's possible to keep the kids on site?
Surely, yes. If
that's the case, I'll support.
Okay. Are you? Okay. My brain is soup. I know Carolyn made the motion. We did get a second. That was from David. Okay. So all of those in favor of moving forward with the assessment at Culture and Web Elementary School. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Okay, Ms. Monroe, that one's 5-2 as well. Okay. 9.4. The one. We'll move on to the Glenn Center. Before we offer up a motion, is there any comments anybody wants to make? Well, some of you made comments when we were doing the entire strategic plan, and some of you didn't. I just don't want to shortchange your opportunity outside the pressure of a motion to say what you may want to say about the study. And Dr. Phillips, I think you indicated you had a comment. Did I just?
Well, I was going to make a motion to defer, but. Go ahead, if there's others, let them talk.
I guess because the Glenn Center was the one we had questions about, were we able to ascertain what kind of information we've already gathered? We were given a report at the meeting when we were at Winkler Middle School that structurally we were sound, or I can't remember, but we didn't have much detail on that. Were we able to get anything on that?
We have not had a chance to go back. I believe, and I may be completely wrong, but I believe that information came out of DPI, one of their engineers, had come down and walked the school. Now, if there was another study done, we can't come up with the information. I do not know. I haven't found anybody in my staff that
If I'm
knows
not
about it.
mistaken, that was the Cabarrus Education Foundation, the night that they presented to us, and they had the engineer come down. Okay. Well, if it's all possible, I guess we need to reach out and find out, can we get some detail, or if there was, I don't know if any type of formal report was done, or whatever. We just need, I think we need probably that information before moving forward. That was, seemed like the sentiment of a lot of the board members last week in discussion, and I've heard it again here tonight. So with that said, does anybody have a motion that they would like to present on 9.4, either for deferment or for acceptance?
I would like to make a motion to defer this item and to, in the interim time, have discussions with the Cabarrus County Education Foundation to understand what assessments they've done and whether there's some possibility of getting some joint funding on that project, on the study.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Phillips. There's a motion. Do I have a second for deferment?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second for deferment of the Glenn Center. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Moreau, that one passes 7-0.
And I make a motion that we approve 9.5.
Okay,
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 9.5, which is the pre-design study for Mount Pleasant Middle School, which I believe, just a quick comment, this is an update to this document, is that correct? The draft that was done in 2007?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is correct.
I thought that's what you'd said, but I wanted to make sure. So I have a motion and a second to approve 9.5. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Monroe, that one passes 7-0. Okay, thank you, board members. We will, we've got some work to come back on a few of those and some that you can move forward on. And we will move on to 9.6, the policy 4700 student records. This was asked to be pulled out of the consent agenda by Ms. Carpenter, and I would, since she pulled it out, I'd like to give her a chance to make a comment if she feels, if she would like to.
Well, you know what my feelings are on this. I just feel like we have what that policy consists of. It is the student records, and I just do not agree with all the information that we are requesting from the students in certain categories. Now, it is our board decides what information we ask for. And again, I will state that parents can opt out of this policy if they don't want that information shared. And we do put it in our handbook, at the very front of our handbook, that the parents do have their opportunity to opt out. And this is just something that I feel strongly. Like Barry feels strong about the maintenance thing, this is something I feel strongly about. And this is the reason that I did ask for that vote.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carpenter. The comment I'd like to make is, of the 12 pages of the policy, there's a small section that defines directory information, and I think that's what Ms. Carpenter is alluding to there. It's 3A, and it's not necessarily information we're broadcasting. We're just calling it directory in case somebody from outside the school, a qualified person from outside the school, not just anybody, but an Army recruiter or a university or a coach from a university or some other type of situation like that, asked, we have clearly defined what directory information is. And ironically, Ms. Carpenter, the photos in our plan were used because of this policy that we all, we liked the photos that we were using, but I understand exactly what the point you were trying to make.
Parents were informed before the photos were used.
So, but anyway, that's part of it too. Using a playbill or the program at a football game, all that is how we're able to not have to get permission every single time you print somebody's name. So, with that being said, we are policy 9.6, policy 4700. To approve on second reading. Do I have a motion that we accept the policy as presented and
So moved.
discussed? I've got a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Monroe, that's
I oppose.
Ms. Monroe, that passes 5-2. Mr. Harrison. Okay, board members, we will move on to 9.7. Thank you, Dr. Louder. Our Rowan Cabarrus Memorandum of Agreement, and this will be as an item for our attorney, Mark Enriquez.
We put this on the action agenda because the board had some questions that had been raised in emails from Mr. Walter and Mr. Phillips. I believe you got some of the answers to those questions. I also made some revisions that they both requested that you'll see in the final version. There was one revision that Mr. Walter suggested I thought might merit some discussion by the board, and that's in paragraph 8.2. The old language of the agreement just says that the Cabarrus County Board of Education will make reasonable efforts to maintain student enrollment, I believe is the language. And Mr. Walter asked a good question, which is, should we have some number so we know what we're targeting? And I guess there's, and we've had just over 200 students for a while, so an option would be to set a target of 200. I guess the program may expand or change, and so I don't know if we want to set a target number that somehow leads a commitment. But I invite Mr. Walter, that's the one change that I did not make. I think I made all the other recommended changes. I wasn't sure on committing to a specific number. I'm not opposed to it, but I thought that may be worth a board discussion, and Mr. Walter can certainly comment on that. But I think everything else, I've made the changes requested, so.
Yeah, and Mark, I do appreciate all the changes. I think it's a much better document than it was. 8.2, if you go back to look at some of these earlier revisions of this document, 8.2 had a number, and it was the initial number. But if you read it now, it says the board will use reasonable efforts to maintain a student population. What does that mean? I mean, it doesn't mean anything really unless you've got a number. 200 was a decent number. We checked with the principal, and he said they've always been above that, so he's comfortable with that number. That's why my suggestion was to add a number of 200. At least that defines what a population would be, what the funding levels, at least a minimum funding level to be expected. So that was my thought on it. That's, you know.
And I'm okay with that. I just wanted the whole board to have an opportunity to, rather than just do that and not have a discussion, make sure the board's okay if we're going to kind of commit to that 200 number. But if everyone's good with that, I'm happy to make that change and then see if the board has any other questions or comments.
Well, if you put a number in there, then put minimum population.
So we could say at least 200? Yeah. So we'll make reasonable efforts to maintain a student population of at least 200 is what kind of we're proposing. Okay.
And there's currently a waiting list for that in the program? Okay. Is everybody okay with that change? Okay. Any other comments on, go ahead, Mr. Shoemaker.
There doesn't need to be a remedy if we fall below that, does there?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, what they'd have to do is, they could talk to us, obviously, they could potentially, bring a claim of breach saying you failed to use reasonable efforts to maintain it. Which is one of the reasons why if you put a number and it falls below, it may invite some controversy on it. Particularly if it's just going to be renewed year to year. We're not necessarily updating that number every year. But again, are they going to sue to breach and what reasonable efforts is? I don't see that as a likely area of litigation, but it's a potential issue. And we could go back and amend it, but we've set it up. It used to be this got acted on every year. We're hoping to avoid making this an annual thing. And I want to, just like we have to certify every year, we plan to continue the program. I brought a paper for Blake to sign saying, we're going to continue it next year, which we are. So we're trying to set it up so it continues unless we want to change it. But again, and the number's fine, but that's the other issue. I don't know if it's going to go to 250 or 300. But if we want to amend it, we can always amend it. And we're just saying a minimum of 200 or so. I think you're okay on that, but that would be we just don't know. And if it drops below, then they could say, well, you need to do more efforts to get it up to 200, which I guess
currently it doesn't appear that it's going to drop. Of course, we don't know. But
well, it's an excellent program. I think we're supportive of it, and we're hoping it will continue. Yeah, if it drops below that, it's a year-to-year agreement. You just cancel your agreement and redo it or something if you have to.
Okay. All right, board members. Do I have a motion to?
Actually, I had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had one item. At last week's meeting, I said I wanted to know why it was saying that we were responsible for all the funds. I know Superintendent Shepard said that, well, the way it works is that Kannapolis Schools pays Cabarrus County School System for the students that are coming from Kannapolis, and then we pay RCCC. So that's fine, but I don't see that in this agreement, nor do I see it in the supporting document that you provided us. So I'm wanting to know where is that, because we need to have that in writing, because school board members change, superintendents change, and not everybody will remember what was agreed to.
Okay, Mark, do you know the answer to his question? Dr. Shepard, Jeff has asked a question about the funding of the Rowan Cabarrus Early College. It doesn't specifically say what we all think is actually taking place.
I don't think we've done what he's asked this week. I don't think we.
I think that's right. So let me make that change. I mean, I think it has operated that way, but you raise a good point, and we had discussed it, and I just, as I was revising it, didn't do that. But I think we should, and I'm trying to, I guess what my understanding is, as a practical matter, is once they enroll, they're then viewed as Cabarrus County students, and those funds, we count them on our ADM, and we get that funding. And I'm trying to decide, but we could try to reflect that here, and probably at least as between Cabarrus and Kannapolis, we could recite in this agreement that upon enrollment in the early college, they become students, they're deemed students of Cabarrus County, so that the money flows through. We did that because for all the reasons it would be confusing to divvy it up and try to apportion funds based on students. We wanted a single source, but I think, although it's operated that way, your point is well taken, Mr. Phillips, and I'll make a revision to reflect that as between Cabarrus and Kannapolis, we're acknowledging that they are considered a Cabarrus student, those that enroll in the college. And I'll specify that here.
And Dr. Kane
Thank you.
has to sign this particular contract, so it's a three-way contract.
Yes, it is a
anyway.
three-way contract. It's got signatures for all three, Rowan Community College and Dr. Kane and our board chair and superintendent, and their board chair and superintendent. So I'll make that change. If you'd like to approve it contingent on me making those two changes, I think that's an option, and then we can circulate for signature, or I can bring it to the board at the next
Well,
meeting.
I'd like to ask my board, are we okay approving it contingent of the changes? Would you rather see the physical document before we? Okay, everybody, the feedback I'm getting is they're okay. So, and I'm fine with that as well. So, do I have a motion to accept the contract with the early college as amended, as to be amended by Mr. Enriquez for the two comments that we just had?
So moved.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. All that's in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's 7-0 for approval of that. We've got one minor, hopefully minor, piece of housekeeping. Mark, my notes, did we go back after defeating the motion to defer on 9.2? Did we go back and have a vote?
Yeah.
As presented? Okay. I didn't write
My
that.
recollection is, but let's make sure your board clerk concurs, is that after the motion to defer failed, Ms. Carpenter then moved for passage of
Okay,
9.2.
I just didn't mark
Is
that down. Is that what you have, Ms. Monroe? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, board members, we will now go into closed session so that the board can convene in closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged pursuant to General Statute 143.318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating, 1, the price or other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease, and pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11 143-318.11A6 to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A8, to formulate plans relating to emergency response to incidents of school violence, and pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A9, to discuss and take action regarding plans to protect public safety. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So,
Second.
motion and second that we convene in closed session. We are now in closed session.